Oh. Right, what do you want? What do you really want? If money was no option, if you could have anything you wanted, time didn't matter, get rid of all of the things that are holding you back, just pursue what's deep in your heart, a la Tony Robbins, all the self-help books, your teachers, your parents, everybody, they all seem to believe that you need to have a goal and stick with it to achieve this one thing or these 5 things or whatever it might be. And I, having done this exercise a lot and having a lot more freedom than most people, a lot more self-belief in my ability to just go out and change the world to suit me, I've come up against this and I have concluded that it's the wrong question. It is the wrong question to ask. So hold on tight. My name is Chris and this is a very different episode of the Gnomecast. So let's start with the very simplest version of this question. Just what do you want? Money's no problem. You can get rid of all the things that are holding you back. What do you want? And if I turn around and said, I'd like to cure cancer, well, what would be the answer to that? I don't know anything about medical technology. I don't know how to go about curing cancer. But wouldn't you like to cure cancer? If you had an option, continue in your life living your 9 to 5 and your normal boring routine, or cure cancer, which one would you choose if you could actually have a cure for cancer? Of course you'd cure cancer. So what we want is shaped by what we believe we can have, what we think is possible. And all these people saying, oh, well, you know, money's no barrier, you can get rid of all the things that are holding you back. They don't really mean it, because my natural intelligence, my ability to access funding and build a lab and recruit a team, these are all things that are holding me back. And I don't think it's realistic for me to say I could do that. So we simplify it and say, well, look, Chris, I'll give you $1 billion. $1 billion. That's more money than anybody could feasibly spend. What would you do with that amount of money? You know, a lot of people will say they'll give it away because they can't imagine how to spend that much money, because they've been conditioned to think small. Somebody like me might say, well, that might get me to the moon or halfway to Mars, but it wouldn't get me back again. So it's not enough. I want more. And this is eternally my problem. I mean, I'm a guy living in a little camper van, and so I don't have to pay rent. I'm only working part-time because I'm just lazy. I am never going to have that kind of money. I know that, but I still have these ideas. And when you ask me this question and tell me to remove all of these barriers, I come up with just the most absurd answers. And people who don't, well, they have no imagination. They're not genuinely answering the question. They're limiting themselves by what they imagine is possible, by what's attainable for them. So it's kind of a stupid question. You know, and next time somebody asks you, well, what do you really want out of life? What's your ultimate goal? Just say, oh, I want to, you know, cure cancer, end all the wars in the Middle East, and solve the energy problem, and global warming, and you know, just reel off this stuff that is actually achievable for somebody or for the right team, the right organization, if they are really committed to doing it. But anybody getting that answer from you is just going to think you're talking rubbish. Having got rid of the first attempt at this question, let's try it again. I was sitting with a friend of mine once. I call him the Fat Man, and the Fat Man was an amazing guy, a bit like me. He'd left the UK years before, wandered the earth, having adventures, and when you first meet him, you think he just seems very rough, poorly educated, and you might kind of judge him and say, well, you know, a bit of a stupido. But we had some really deep conversations. He was a very deep and sincere thinker, very interesting guy. And I met him, we were working in Taiwan, and he had this plan. He had a goal. He'd swallowed this shit, hook, line and sinker. And he said, I am going to work in Taiwan for the next 3-4 years. I'm going to save up all my money for the target that I need to buy a piece of land right next to a beach in Aceh in northern Indonesia. I'm going to buy this beach, build some little bungalows, rent them out to tourists, and that's it. I'll never work again, and I can achieve that goal before I'm 40. And that sounds not too unreasonable. I can see, yeah, 4 years hard work in a reasonably wealthy Asian country would allow you to go and buy that plot of land in some remote corner of the world where the global inflation hasn't caught up with you yet. So, yeah, reasonable goal. And 6 months later, he disappeared. He just went out one night, got really drunk, quit all his jobs, disappeared, and came back 3 or 4 months later, empty pockets. He'd spent all the money. And I can't blame him, I'm the same. But he did this over the next few years, I would say 4 or 5 times. He never saved up the money, and when he passed 40, he was the performing white monkey in a classroom full of little kids, teaching them the ABC song. And he was kind of stuffed. Maybe because his goal was too high for the person that he was. He didn't really know himself, know what was attainable for himself. But on the other hand, it's not all bad, because not long after he passed 40 years old, there was an earthquake in Southeast Asia, a huge tsunami, and it came and wiped away the beach. And if he had achieved his goal, he would have been standing on that beach when the wave came in and swept away his land, his houses, and maybe him as well. So not achieving the goal actually didn't hurt him at all. It worked out quite well for him in the end. And there's a quote from a guy named Bruce Lee, famous fighter, and he always said that if you are wedded to one outcome, then you're dead. He said you need to be able to adapt, to change, to vary your goals and your strategy according to the situation. You have to be sensitive to your surroundings and willing to change, not committed to a goal. And that made a lot of sense. I think he was a pretty smart guy. He achieved a lot in his life, and it's an interesting philosophy to have. Anyway, I was sitting with the fat man, and he'd still bought in fully into this achieve your goals bullshit. And he was asking me, come on Chris, stop monkeying around, you just float around the world without a goal. What do you really want? Come on, sit there now. We had a few minutes. Sit down there, close your eyes, think about what you really want. Just let your brain empty, yourself relax. What is the most important thing to you? And I suddenly realized I was fantasizing about women's breasts. Which is a bit embarrassing because we're trying to do serious things here, and I shouldn't let my mind wander to think about other stuff. So we try it again, and I do this whole, visualizing what's important, imagine the perfect life, and it's the same again. And we did this 3-4 times before we gave up in disgust. And then a few weeks later, I was riding somewhere on my motorbike. It's in Taiwan. There are these girls known as betel nut girls, and they sell mildly addictive nuts that you chew on, turn your mouth red, and they sit by the side of the road in these little glass booths, and they also sell cold drinks. And I'm riding my motorbike, desperate for a drink. I see one of these booths, and next to it is a 7-Eleven, a convenience store. They're everywhere in Taiwan. And I stopped in front of the booth. This girl came out, and I told her what I wanted. She kind of looked at me and wiggled her boobs a bit, because they all just wear bikinis, these girls. Not always bikinis, sometimes less than that. But anyway, and she came back with my drink, and she took a little bit of money. But it was a lot more expensive than the 7-Eleven that was right next door. And she kind of sneered at me as she walked away. And I sat there, like, opening my drink and just thinking, you fucking loser. You have just paid more than you have to because there's a pretty girl flashing her boobs at you. You really need to get this boob fascination under control. You need to acknowledge this problem, deal with it, and then move on. And then the question is, well, what else do you want out of life? If you've got a girlfriend with nice boobs, or whatever, you've meditated and cleared your mind of this obsession. Whatever you've done, this problem has now been solved. And now you can focus on what you really want. And I think the lesson from that is that very few people are clear about what they want, and they're constantly distracted because we have basic emotional needs, physiological needs, and if they're not met, nothing else makes any sense. You need to be a well-balanced, calm, happy individual who knows himself and is in control of himself, and only then can you think about achieving the big stuff, the complex stuff, the more difficult stuff. And when I say difficult, that's all actually a lot easier because you've got rid of all the things that are causing you to make bad decisions. Probably know, I left England with massive debt because I'd made a whole bunch of stupid decisions. I floated around Europe for a couple of years, having fun, but constantly running out of money, never able to get ahead because I was making stupid decisions because I hadn't got my head together. So whatever it is, whatever the small things are that you need to sort them out before you start worrying about the going to Mars or curing cancer or having the nice little house and the 2.4 children and the dog and whatever it is that you really want out of life. So then once we're through with what's going on in your head that needs to be sorted out before you can set your goals and go and achieve your thing, then we can look into a little bit more detail about what it is that you really want. And I don't mean like the beach with the little huts and the tourists and never have to work again. Or I'm into sailing. I love sailing boats. But do I really want to own a big beautiful sailing boat and cruise away around the world with my crew of beautiful girls with big boobs? And the answer to that is, why do I want to go sailing? What actually is it that attracts me about sailing? Because an awful lot of sailing is quite boring. There's an awful lot of just fixing stuff, exotic locations. There's an awful lot of, it's 4 o'clock in the morning and I haven't slept for 2 days and it's blowing arseholes and the boat's tipped over and everybody's puking up. And is it really that great? No. So why do I do it? And if I can understand why I do it, then I can think about what it is that I really, really want. So you need to go back a step. My friend, the fat man, doesn't like having a boss, doesn't like having to get up and go to work at a certain time for somebody else every day. If he's got a bunch of beach huts of people coming in, he's going to have to do marketing, he's going to have cleaning, with a receptionist, he's going to have to collect the money from people somehow. He's still going to have lots of work to do. It's not just a case of waking up every day and there's a bunch more money in the bank, or people walking down the gate of their own accord, putting cash into your hand, all perfectly aligned with your things that you've already got. It's not going to be like that. So what is it that you want? It's the not having a boss, and it's the environment. And when I think about the environments that I like, well, yeah, I like the sea, I like beaches. I can understand the attraction, the idea of being on a beach, having some activities to do, maybe 4 hours a day to run your little business, and enough money coming in that you don't have to work. That is really, really appealing to me. But I also want more security, more insurance. When the big wave comes and fucks it up, I want to be able to walk away. When I get bored with it, after 5 years or 10 years, and I'm not 40, I'm 50, I want to have options. So you could say that my dream is a bit bigger. So instead of just saying, no, I don't want the house on the beach, or I don't want the sailing boat, why not sit down and write down, I need that security. I don't want to work more than 20 hours a week. I want to be in a beautiful environment. And I want to list these things and then figure out, well, what's the situation that enables me to have those? Where do I have to go and what do I have to do to get all the bits? And that defines the goal for me. It's not something that I pull out of my arse because I'm passionate about it right now. And this brings me back to, I went through a phase where I was going to buy a boat and bring it to Taiwan, and I was researching all this, and I was trying to figure out how do you justify it, can you make some money out of it. And the big thing with sailing boats is always, oh, it's a great place to develop teamwork skills and personal development, and, you know, again, the self-help thing, but this time it's helping others. So you find some government organization and you start taking groups of underprivileged young people on sailing adventures and blah, 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 blah. And this justifies me having a boat. And very often these kind of schemes fail because the people that are paying for it, the people that are worried about the underprivileged kids, realize that there are cheaper ways to achieve their goals than sponsoring you to have a nice boat. Achieving the goals that you've claimed you're going to achieve is actually quite hard. You might find that the results that you deliver are not satisfactory. So all around the world, in wealthy countries, there are sailing boats sitting by the dock, rotting, because the owner can no longer afford to maintain them and is now trying to sell them but can't find a way out of this deal. And it's a complete disaster because they followed their heart instead of following the logic. Find a way to make shitloads of money and buy a boat and it's just a toy if the boat is really what you want. Or it's going to be a boat in the Caribbean rather than a boat in the Pacific. You pick your location. So you're narrowing down your dream, your goals, based on a better understanding of what that goal is going to help you achieve. It's just a vehicle to get to, whether it's freedom, traveling the world, or helping underprivileged kids, or whatever. You've got to have those goals defined, and the process to get you there, the boat, the house on the beach, is just a tool to achieve that. Now, does that leave me at the end of this video?
Well, good morning. I'm looking a bit ropey because I didn't sleep much again, and this time it's because my head was spinning, because I had a conversation last night after filming the little video about goal setting, and somebody had seen me and we had a chat about how hard it is to make YouTube video and creativity in general and art, and she was telling me that she was on a trip driving around, sleeping in her car. She was trying to get her mojo back because her job had just kind of sucked all the life out of her, taken away her creativity and ability to express herself. And this led to, a conversation about how your life, your environment shapes who you are. And I started to talk about what I call anti-goals, which is the things that you don't want in your life. And this is anathema to the self-help industry, because the gurus are all about quick solutions, and it's just, like, find that one thing, follow your heart, you can have whatever you want, blah, blah, blah. And this kind of presupposes that there is just one solution to whatever ails you, and that it's going to continue to be the perfect solution. And that's kind of limited by what you know and by what possibilities are open to you. And the more you know, the more possibilities you leave open, the more opportunity you have to thrive and to adapt and to change and to grow. So I think it's better to just say, look, I want everything, I want it all, but I don't want that, and I don't want that, and that's shit. And start to narrow it down, but leave all the possibilities open that you haven't consciously excluded. So, for example, I'm not living in a van right now because I've seen Instagram photos of cool sunsets and hashtag van life, and and kind of fallen for the fantasy. I'm here because I can't stand the winter weather in Northern Europe. The cold and the grey and the gloom and the depression and the short days and just the sheer awfulness of it all. I don't want that, so I'm following the sun. And I could have just tried to find one place in the world where I could go and live that has perfect weather year around, but there aren't many of those, and there isn't room for us all to do that. But this kind of nomadic, just go where seems okay right now, is a solution to that problem. So understanding what the thing that I don't want is then leads me towards clearer thinking about how I'm going to live my life in order to have the life that I want. And similarly, I was in China before I went to Ireland, and it's a great experience. You can have a lot of fun, you can learn a lot, but eventually the value of those experiences and learning opportunities and so on is outweighed by the fact that I just don't want to live in pollution. The air quality is abysmal, and if you think, what's your life going to be in 10 years or 20 years if you stay in that environment? You're going to be coughing your lungs out, you're going to be unhealthy, sad, you're going to die young. That's not what I want, so move on. And the same is also true of people in your relationships, in your interactions with other people. I'll give you a difficult example. I've been spending a lot of time in Indonesia because I was in a relationship with somebody from there, and we had to go to Indonesia and discuss like a formal marriage in Indonesia. Very conservative society, religion plays a big part on it, and everybody came to my wife's house to talk about it. And when I say everybody, basically the men folk came to discuss, because it's a very patriarchal society, and they all assumed that they had the right to smoke in my wife's house, even though she told them that she didn't like that. Please don't smoke in my house. And I fucking can't stand cigarettes. I hate cigarettes. But these guys, they're all just puffing away. And I can't say anything, because patriarchy is not simply about men have all the power. Patriarchy is about a hierarchy between the men as to who makes the decisions. There's always the ringleader, the head of the village, the leader of the mosque or the church or whatever, the powerful person who makes the rules. And I, as the lowest member of the society, because I was the newest guy to join this village, this community, I'm not allowed to say anything. I just have to sit there and choke because these arrogant fuckers have decided to come and smoke in our house. So I don't want that, and this is one of the reasons why I could never live in Indonesia, and it's a big contributing factor in the breakup of my marriage, is just this me being very clear about the things that I am not prepared to tolerate. I don't want to hang around with smokers. I have no need of the God hypothesis. I don't want to be around people whose lives are defined by religion. And I don't want to live in this very patriarchal, hierarchical society. I like things to be a lot more flexible. And it would have been a lot easier. You can visit Indonesia and have a great time as a visitor, because people will cut you a lot of slack. My problem was that I was trying to put down roots and be from there, and that took away my freedom. So again, the nomad life is kind of a solution. Once I'm clear about what I don't want, then this kind of mobile living, this not being rooted, becomes a natural solution. So I don't pick this because I've seen the photos. I am using this as a tool, if you like, to have more of the life that I want, to avoid the things that I don't want. And then the conversation last night, this is a young lady living in her car. She's parked next to me. There have been times in my life when I've kind of felt I had this license to just walk up and start talking to every girl that I meet. It's potentially predatory. It is at least presumptuous. And I can see that this is not something that girls always want, and you put people in a position where they have to say no, just say no. And that's, in modern society, we understand that women are not only allowed to do this, but should do this. You should be clear about what your boundaries are, what your rules are, and what parameters you're prepared to live your life under and interact with other people. And now that I'm a bit more grown up and I can respect and understand these things, I can just have a chat with somebody who's curious about what I was doing and enjoy the chat and get more out of it than I might have done otherwise. Because the no, that I don't want that, just that thing, it sets a framework for all of the other interactions and activities and so forth in our lives, which is a lot more open, a lot more flexible, a lot more adaptable than if you just simply say, I'm going to talk to this person for this reason because I have this one goal. So anti-goals, the narrowing down of your options when your options are infinite, I think is a really important thing to do. I think it's much better than just picking the one thing that your heart says you should be doing now and forever. So there we have it. I think that's enough. Do I need to say anything else? The answer is no.